Welcome, everybody, to your weekly edition of the Not Your Average Investor Show. Today, we got a topic that's got a lot of steam. It's for a good cause. It's this idea that home price affordability really is a problem in the United States of America. And if you're a rental property investor, it is totally sane to ask yourself if this affordability crisis may crater the housing market. So we're going to address this thing head on. And of course, we're going to start off with talking about what's going on, right? With the hurricane coming here to Florida, we'll give you all a little bit of update. But I'm your host, Pablo Gonzalez. With me, as always, the man that I affectionately like to call GC, because he's got the genius concepts, because he knows how to generate cash flow, because he's a great co-host.
Well, yeah. Were you waiting for me to fill in my own accolade there?
No, I just froze. And because his name is Gregg Cohen, say hello, Greg.
Hello, everybody. Great to be with you.
It's good to be with you all today. I'm feeling a little hoarse today, Greg. I don't know if you can tell.
I have heard.
So weekend away with the fellas.
Yeah.
Just a lot of karaoke.
Yeah.
So
What was the song du jour?
Total Eclipse of the Heart is what I say. Have you ever seen me sing that?
I mean, I don't know if
Only
I've
on
seen
video.
it live.
Yeah.
I have seen it on video.
Are we even friends, bro?
Yeah.
Okay, but you know what you've seen me do?
What's that?
The roll call back.
There we go.
Kicking us off with our leadoff hitter, batting first today.
Mr. John.
Mr. John Henning, the maven from the mountains of Denver,
Miss
greeting
Leslie
us.
Wilson.
And our regulars, Gary and Rosalind Riley from Marietta, California. We regard you. Joanna, our community manager in the chat, welcoming everybody. If you need anything, reach out to her. We got the ringmaster in the house.
Drew Barnhill.
We got Zenobia from Georgia.
All right, Zenobia. Nice
good to see you. Good to see you too. We got Roger Fonse from Inland Empire.
Reggie, great to hear from you, buddy.
Good to have you. And we got Hervé Francois.
Oh, yeah.
Saying, what up, JW fan? Hervé is in the house.
Oh, yeah. Hervé is in the house. My bad.
In the house, Hervé.
It's great to see
Hervé, we did not wear matching shirts. Have we known that you were coming today? I don't know.
It's our
I'm
tradition.
disappointed in myself. We got the MVP in the house. He is back, folks. Mr. Lee Bishop. Buddy, good to see you here. Good to see you up and on the road to recovery, my friend. We've been thinking about you a lot. We got Marie Ruckoff from Arizona, right?
All right.
Glad
Marie.
to be back, Marie.
Nice to have you.
We got the mystery man.
Mr. Denny Davis.
Mr. Denny Davis greeting us from Kuwait out there serving our country, Denny. We appreciate you so
Making
much,
us
my
proud,
friend.
man. Thanks for keeping us safe.
We got the Shaw man.
Nadeem Shah.
With his trademark good morning, good afternoon from the West Coast. We got David Blattner in the house. Dave B from Massachusetts.
All right, Dave B.
Dave's back.
I love it.
People are showing up today. Jeona. Yeah. I remember that she gave me like a big, it's like an Jeona.
Oh, I love it.
Because I think I was saying Jaona or something.
Yeah,
I speak in
name.
Spanish when I don't know it. Anyways, Jaona, great to have you back.
Great to have you here.
Big game, Tammy, big game, Gamison.
Game time.
Game time.
I gotta tell you, so whenever my kids ask me what time it is, because I have a 10 and a 12-year-old, and they ask me all these questions repeatedly, they always ask me what time it is, and I always say game time. I always think about you when my kids are asking me what time it is.
I love that. Susan Parker says she's glad to be on today. Susan, good to have you here.
From the summit. It's wonderful to have you.
That's right. Chris Moorfield. Hi, everyone. My name is, it says Anya. I'm an investment operations coordinator at JWB. Hope everyone's enjoys it.
That is so good to see you, Anya. That's really wonderful to have you.
Love to have the team in the house. We got the patriarch and matriarch of the first family of the Not Your Average Investor Show, Ken and Carolyn Maline, who we salute you. We got a Hall of Fame first baseman in the house. A Hall of Famer in the house with his wife this time, who is the decision maker.
Ooh.
Jim Kirko.
I don't know if he's introduced us to the wife yet.
So I
wonder what it's like being the wife of a Hall of Famer.
It's got to be a real responsibility. So we salute you as well.
We salute you.
Yeah,
welcome to the show.
Good to have you. And of course, we got El Gran Amigo.
Bill Shields desde Duval.
Man, my throat's rough.
Oh, yourself.
Good to have you, Bill Shields. Good to have you in the house. All right, we got the whole gang here. Everybody's checking in. I heard that there was some confusion as far as tomorrow we had a webinar tomorrow that we have postponed because of the hurricane.
We have.
So I think maybe some people saw that and maybe thought that today was postponed as well.
Yeah.
But glad you're all here today. And let's talk about the hurricane, GC. It's a big one, man. I didn't even know that hurricanes formed in the Gulf of Mexico, like natively. I always thought they just kind of whipped around and got in there, but this is a new one, huh?
This is a new one. There's a lot of things that are new, and I think there's a lot of things that are scary about this one. The fact that it intensified to a Cat 5, the fact that as Floridians, I don't think we have ever seen a storm start where it started and then intensify like it has. So a lot of things new here. And obviously just the recency of going through Hurricane Helene, our first thoughts here are just trying to be there with and for our friends in Tampa Bay, in Orlando, all the way through the path of the storm there. There's just a lot that goes through your mind when, you as a state, you get hit back to back, and I think there's just a mental and emotional kind of burden that all Floridians are kind of feeling right now.
Yeah, for sure.
But it's nothing like what our friends in Tampa are feeling right now. And, being in Jacksonville, and I grew up in Orlando, I have a lot of friends and family in Orlando, in Tampa. I mean, I just had like a little mini high school reunion with friends that came up who live in Orlando, and we were hanging out 2 weeks ago. And so to think about, those families right now is kind of where our hearts and our head is at, because it's a lot. And this is going to be a big storm, and it's really going to devastate, especially the Tampa area. And who knows what the devastation will bring there and further inland. Yeah.
Big, scary storm for people that literally just got hit and about to like walk in through, I heard somewhere along the lines of like that area of Tampa, north of Fort Myers, south of the Big Bend, has not been hit directly by a storm in a long time. And there's just a lot of people in the path of this thing.
Yeah.
Right. So we'll see what happens there. As far as a company, GC, you guys, I feel like we just gave this update last week, but we've got new folk here today. I think just kind of talk from like somebody who is in charge of 6,000 houses here locally, how you guys go into action right now.
Yeah, the thing about it is it starts with preparation. It starts with planning years and years in advance for how you can execute a plan to make sure, number one, that you're taking care of people, and then number two, that you're taking care of property. And so that's how we go into action. We have been in action as whenever we start to hear something forming in, any body of water around, whether that's the Gulf or whether that's the Atlantic or out near Africa, we and our leadership team is on it. We are monitoring the situation at the first point that it starts to take a turn where it can become something that affects Florida or affects our area. That's when the preparation starts to go into effect. Our entire team is notified. Our team is not surprised at what happens when we go into hurricane prep mode and storm prep mode, because we share this protocol. We train on this throughout the year. And so nobody is surprised. So we all go into action. So there's an internal effort, but there is a whole lot of external effort. And it starts with taking care of our residents. We make sure that we proactively let the residents know what we know about the storm coming. We share simple things that can be done to protect people and to protect property. And we open that communication line very, very early on. Of course, the communication line is always open, but it's more proactive communication through emails, phone calls, texts, and things of that nature. The next thing that we do is we mobilize our contractor base. And our contractor base, again, isn't surprised by any of this. In fact, it started years and years ago with training our contractor base. And they know that in big storms, JWB and JWB clients take priority. This is the benefit of working with a vertically integrated provider that operates at such a large scale and provides such income for that contractor base, that when moments like this happen, you have a team that has your back by way through JWB and by way of our contractor base. So we go out to properties in advance and make sure that debris is removed. If they happen to be construction sites, we are out to all roughly 300-400 homes that are actively being built right now. We tie down what needs to be tied down. We remove debris. And then on a personal house level, all of that is highly encouraged for our residents. And then we'll actually go out and see properties that need to be secured down, even if it's not a new build or even if it is not a renovation. So a whole lot of activity has already gone on here. And that's just standard protocol for when we have a major storm and a major threat like this.
Yeah, totally, man. I think about my days in Miami when I was in construction, coming up in that game as a subcontractor and then a general contractor. And the idea that when these storms come, it's like a really heightened activity for all contractors, right? My sales guys in my installation shop were sitting there cheering for it to come because they know that they can go out and like fix a bunch of roofs and make a bunch of money. When we were when I was then the general contractor for a hospital, the hospital, which was kind of like that 8,000-pound gorilla in the room, they were making sure that we were ready to do everything possible for anything that they needed ahead of time. And it's kind of like that's the scale at which JWB is here with their contractors, because you spend $7 million a month on construction costs for people, having the roofer, like the different people ready to prioritize the resident experience throughout this thing and get stuff resolved and get first dibs, not get new pricing when all of a sudden it happens, is a major, major advantage of what you all can do. Your ability to, the fact that you have 100+ people that you now put into like emergency mode reminds me of when my brother used to work at FPL, kind of like everybody just jumps in and just like they're on different shifts of answering phones and making sure that people are taken care of. I want to bring it also to, that's kind of me thinking as an investor that knows the inner workings of JWB. Speaking of investors, I just want to call out a couple people that are in the chat because I haven't checked in a while, but Jeff Lenve is back here today.
Right. Jeff's on our team.
Oh yeah, so he's back. Chris Gonzaga.
Oh, from the illustrious Hudson Valley.
From the illustrious Hudson Valley. Chris, haven't seen you in a while. And we got somebody new, Maurice Irons from Colorado Springs.
All
so
right,
Mo
Maurice.
Irons. Can we call you Mo?
Mo Irons.
Mo Irons from Colorado Springs, Garden of the Gods, beautiful place. That being said, GC, I think that it's really hard to get in a conversation with anybody as a real estate investor that invests in Florida without them being like, yeah, but hurricanes, man, like, aren't you afraid of hurricanes? And I would assume that it's kind of like, this is the first time in a while, right? I think it was like 2006 when like 3 came through in one summer and everyone was just like, ugh, hurricanes. Yeah. It's kind of like we're feeling that kind of level of like annoyance with it. But how do you answer that question of why would I invest somewhere where there's a potential that 2 hurricanes hit back to back?
Nobody, when you live in Florida, nobody is surprised that hurricanes come during this time of the year. It is a part of life. And I've been living in Florida for the majority of my life, as you have as well. Oh. And it is, us in Florida have an appreciation for the storm, and we understand how to protect people and how to protect property. But nobody's surprised that hurricanes come to Florida. But, I think the greatest testament that people still decide to come to Florida, even knowing that hurricanes are here, is you look at the population growth. It's kind of like a trade-off, right? Listen, we all wish there was a perfect place in the country that we could have everything we wanted and there would be no natural disasters, but that place doesn't exist. And so for Floridians, we say, well, you know what? Hurricanes are our thing. And luckily we get, days and sometimes up to a week of a heads up. Yeah. And so I bring all of this up because at first I think about, why do I choose to put my family here in Jacksonville? Yeah. And why are so many people moving to Jacksonville? It's because, we do that trade-off. And the reason that's important for you as an investor is because Jacksonville specifically and the state of Florida are the places where people are taking that trade-off and making the decision that I'm going to move here and understand that hurricanes can happen. And when you're thinking from your investor lens, you got to realize that we've had a lot of major hurricanes in Florida. We've had a lot of major hurricanes that have come through this state. Luckily, Jacksonville hasn't ever been hit directly from a major hurricane. We are typically not hit directly. We're not hit directly, most likely. Well, we will not be hit directly because it's coming from the west this time. And we weren't hit directly for Helene, and that's a little bit part of our geography. But you got to understand that hurricanes come through here and home prices continue to go up. And rents continue to go up over year, and median incomes continue to go up in the state of Florida and in Jacksonville specifically. So that's what you need to think about. When you're thinking about putting your dollars in places, if we're taking our emotional hat off here and just putting that to the side, the same reasons that you decided to invest in Jacksonville before should be the same reasons that you decide to invest post-hurricane. Yeah. Because you have to realize that hurricanes are a part of the decision here to move here. People are moving here in droves. And then we also have insurance. And once we take care of people first, then we can start to put our conversations into how do we take care of property. And that's where the insurance part comes here. And insurance is here to give you peace of mind in times like this. There are many other assets that don't have such great insurance options that you have here. Yeah. And so, as an owner of rental properties, you guys know I own over 300 rental properties here in Jacksonville. I have a lot on my mind right now, but insurance helps me sleep better at night, and it will help you sleep better at night after we know that people are safe.
Yeah. And in the chat, we've got a bunch of folks saying, like Danny is saying, like in Arkansas, our thing is tornadoes, right? And Leslie's saying Colorado gets tornadoes too. And then Drew Barnhill saying, basically all of the South is at threat of hurricane, right? We just saw this. I lived in Southern California for a while where people love to live as well because it's a beautiful natural environment. Lived through an earthquake or two. Recently saw the devastating wildfires. That like as somebody that's not familiar with that seems insane, right? But like, I guess you pick the thing that you have to deal with, no matter where you're going to live or where you're going to put your money.
Right.
I think I told you this on the run, but like I've always kind of said that like the best and worst parts of the hurricanes is like the anticipation of it. When I say the best, I say the worst, I say tongue in cheek in the sense that like you get a lot more days throughout the year that you're anticipating it than you ever actually get hit by it. And it's like this elevated level of anxiety. But really the best part is we know it's coming. People are evacuating. People are, I just went out and filled 25 sandbags from the beach right by your house.
Yeah.
Heck of a workout, by the way.
I bet.
It was kind of good. But, because I'm worried about a little bit of flooding, right? So I'm just getting prepped. I'm doing my thing.
Mhm.
I saw my neighbors doing the same thing, right? So this like warning that you get. And just on a philosophical level, it's just like we live on a planet Earth that feels like it's like stuff's getting weird and getting changing all the time. And places that I used to thought like my friends and I say this like with my throat kind of clenching, but my friends in Miami, when we'd get like pissed off at hurricanes, we'd be like, forget hurricanes, man. We should just go buy property in like the mountains of North Carolina. And like these last couple of weeks feels like nothing is like there's no place where there isn't some kind of like something, man. So I get it, right? Like it's you pick the thing, and I think if you're an investor, you're picking the thing that everybody else wants more in the future than they do today.
Yeah.
And population patterns moving to Florida and all these different things, and we've been built for hurricanes since we underestimated Andrew. And like you see all these other states getting hit by stuff, and Florida is sending the like you saw like the lineup of FPL trucks ready to go to deploy to North Carolina because we're just ready for it, right? So it's like, do you want to invest in a place that's like been hardened for something that gives you an advance notice to do it? Or do you want to run away from that and still probably have those issues somewhere else? Is real.
You can't avoid it. Yeah. I think this is a time to lean in with emotion and compassion for those who have it so much worse than we have it here in Jacksonville and probably where you are in the country. And so I think it's okay to do that at some point when you're making an investment decision. We will have to put that emotion to the side and we will have to make the best objective decisions. And when you are making the best objective decision for where to put your money, the fact that we have hurricanes is good to take into account.
Yeah.
But look at all of the advantages that we have for this asset class in Jacksonville. And just know that there's risk mitigation even built in to take care of property damage. And, it comes back. The same reasons you were interested in investing in Jacksonville before these two hurricanes will be the same reasons that you should make that decision later on.
And that being said, I would just say that this hurricane seems bigger than the last one, right? Like it seems scarier because it's going to hit an area that just got hit and just got some damage. I'm definitely nervous about it in a way that I haven't been for a long time, but I think we all are. And based on this, like what we're talking about of like life and limb, I think because we've seen these images of hurricane stuff, we are all more nervous, and that's a good thing because it has more people taking better care of themselves and their assets than they normally would if this was the first storm of the season.
I agree. I think that is, going through so many hurricanes and being a Floridian, you joke with your friends who are in Florida and you're like, oh yeah, it's a hurricane warning. Yeah, whatever. That is not the case now. And we want it to be more of this case for the general population taking heed. I think there is just kind of like a monumental like building effect of seeing those images from Helene and the heartache and the compassion that we all have for that. And then to see it 2 weeks later, you're just feeling for your common brother and sister, down the road. Should point out in Jacksonville, for those who aren't aware, we're expecting at this moment something around tropical storm force winds, which, if we're putting it in perspective, is about what we received for Helene. So somewhere around maybe 40 mile an hour, maybe 50 mile an hour sustained winds with gusts maybe up to 60 or 70. And you guys know I'm not a weatherman. So, know that that's going to change and you should do your own research.
You could be a weatherman if you put your mind to it. Just saying.
I could be right. I could be wrong a lot and still have a job. But to put it in perspective for all of you who own properties here in Jacksonville, we internally are bracing for a similar experience to what we just saw with Helene. Obviously we're prepared for it. I did want to make one other note because you had talked about how, we get first dibs when it comes to our contractor base and how important that was. My team actually has been able to service a lot of the Helene work orders. That's obviously a priority for us, even here in Jacksonville, knowing that we're not most likely going to get the brunt of the storm. And so I thought it was a cool stat to share that Helene happened about a week and a half ago. 40% of the work orders that came directly from the Helene storm have actually already been resolved by our team.
Nice.
So that's a very high number in a week and a half from tropical storm force type winds.
Yep.
So our team is working so hard to get all of our residents in that place that we can be, as close to status quo as possible, knowing that we're likely going to get a large influx of maintenance items again. And we'll be here to be there with your residents, just like we were last time. I shared the stat with you. We answered 96% of phone calls through the storm during Helene. That type of an approach and effort and team hands-on strategy and execution is exactly what we are going to do here when we go through Milton here.
Got it, GC. So let's give the people what they want and talk about the subject du jour. It's the subject of the day. Real quick though, on Tuesday, we'll give a update on everything that happened on our show Tuesday, right? So you'll find out stats and whatnot. But as an investor, I've learned no news is good news during this stuff, right? Like JWB is going to be inundated with calls from residents that need something and they're going to be tending to that stuff. If you haven't heard from your portfolio manager in the next couple of days over the hurricane, it's probably because nothing happened in your property, right?
Yeah, well, I would say those things continue to roll in even after the first couple of days.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't go so far to say probably nothing happened with your property. That continues to happen. But no news is good news. And we are prioritizing taking care of our residents, and our entire team is working to take care of those residents and working with our contractors. So we're putting the majority of our resources there. We're not going to call you and say, nothing is wrong with your home as a client right off the bat. You're going to continue to get regular phone calls and regular updates, and we're always going to be there to answer your questions. But I want you to know that we're not going to proactively call you. We never proactively call during a storm because it's better for us to focus those resources on those folks who need that help right there. If there is an issue with your home, we are going to call you. We are going to talk about it with you. We're going to have a solution in place. But no news is good news when it comes to a storm and the communication as a client.
Okay. All right. So Juliana Artojo asks, my portfolio account manager is Christian. Is he still there with JWB?
Yes, absolutely.
There you go, Juliana. Good to have you. That's a new name to the show.
Yes, right? I know Juliana. I know her family very well. A longtime client. So it's wonderful to have you.
Love it. And the ringmaster Drew Barnhill says he's putting his closing on property number 6 tomorrow, the day before the hurricane. So good stuff, buddy. Keep on buying them, bro. You're good to go. All right, GC. So topic du jour. Home price affordability. We've been talking for a long time about the home affordability crisis in America. And we've had a bunch of different statistics around it and whatnot. Today, we really just want to zero in on this idea of, does this thing have the potential to crater the rental market, right? If nobody can afford houses and we're just sitting here holding houses, is that a potential risk to us given what prices have done recently?
Yeah, I think it's really scary. We're kind of going from one scary topic to another scary topic today. But I think it's really scary when we think about home price affordability. And so, when you're really scared, we have to dig deeper. We have to bring data. We have to bring perspective to it, because if all we do is just live in this fear, we can jump to improper conclusions, which can have adverse effects on you and your financial wealth. So, what I want to do today is to kind of break down the different elements of this and add some data, add some perspective so that, we can have our not your average investor take. But let's just kind of lean into what we know to be true, even without data and perspective. We know home prices went up a ton. We know rents went up a ton. We know that interest rates went up a ton. And we know that inflation overall went up a ton.
Yeah. And
so we know we live in this place as a country right now where things are unaffordable. to the level that we have just never experienced before. And so that's very real. It's important to recognize, though, that this isn't the same challenge across the country for every individual city. There are some cities that have been dealing with affordability challenges for decades.
Yep.
And people continue to still live there and move there and enjoy it there.
Yeah. New York comes to mind.
New York, right?
Yeah.
And then there are others that are just experiencing it pretty recently,
Mhm.
but it's a big challenge. And then there's others that
Miami comes to mind.
right, there we go. Thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah.
And then there are other cities that, have been sort of under the radar for a little while, have certainly had a lower cost of living, and they are much better positioned to handle this challenge. Jacksonville would be one of those cities. But you start to think about the way to, after we've kind of like all taken the sucker punch of affordability overall being a challenge,
Yeah.
you start to like break down and say, okay, well, how am I gonna overcome this?
Yep.
Right? How do cities overcome this? How does our country overcome this?
Yep.
And the best way to overcome this is to focus on initiatives that increase median incomes. Because when median incomes go up, things can still go up in price, but you can afford them. People have more take-home pay.
Yeah.
I've done a lot of speaking in a lot of rooms in a lot of places in the country and whatnot. And when we talk about median incomes going up, I have never seen somebody have a frown.
Yeah.
Right. When we rally, it is something that we all can win, and median incomes being high is the reason that people still love to live in New York, even though there's a home price affordability challenge there.
There you go.
Right.
There you go.
So, prices and rents going up are one thing, but if we can come up with strategies and we can live in places where median incomes are going up, it's okay.
Yep.
It can actually be healthy and thriving, because when median incomes go up and rents go up and home prices go up, quality of life in that city goes up too. And so, we tend to only think about one side of this, which home prices, interest rates, rents going up, and we just think it will never, ever become affordable again. Yeah. But there are a number of factors that actually can lead to increased affordability, median incomes being one of them. And you think about the initiatives that drive JWB. We want to be an impact in our city.
Yep.
And if you boil it down, we want to be an impact in our city so that we can help raise median incomes.
I love it, man.
And median incomes raising increases the quality of life. That's obviously a big part of our downtown initiative. So I think we need to also focus on the positive ways to help this country get out of it, and city by city is a different story.
Yeah, totally. First of all, I want to welcome the better Gregg back. He hasn't been here in a while. Gregg Stone, good to see you, buddy.
I always feel better when the better Gregg.
When the better Gregg is here, maybe he should just come in here and take over. But anyways, yeah, as you're going through that, GC, I'm thinking, first of all, it's one of the reasons why you don't hear me shutting up about Miami versus here and like my lived experience, right? Like one of the reasons I tell people that Miami is at such risk, it's because it has the greatest discrepancy between cost of living and average wage, right? Like it has the highest cost of living to average wage in America, right? And that to me is a systemic problem, right? Like you don't hear about the affordability crisis in Chicago and New York because they have healthy job, like
incomes are way up.
Incomes are way up, right? You hear about San Francisco being unaffordable, but there's also all this opportunity in the valley, in Silicon Valley, and all these different things. And then the other thing I think about is just like the places that have the supply that can happen, right? Like New York is famously just kind of like the most dense place in the world. They've just built the heck out of it. They kept up there and they kept up with incomes, right? Like Miami having an issue with that too. So that's what it pumps me up so much of when you guys are talking about what you're doing in downtown, raising median incomes, all these different things. That this has been a long form conversation on the show. It's been a long time initiative for JWB because, what's obvious to me that has blown my mind since like very early on in this is the way that you all think long-term and you plan long-term so that you know the games that you need to be playing before the games actually manifest themselves to the public.
Yeah.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about the median income side. Let's talk about the supply side and how we can hit on like what we think Jacksonville can do, because I think it's not going to be a surprise for everybody to hear that we believe that Jacksonville is uniquely positioned to handle this affordability crisis and to continue to be a great place to live, a great place to invest, and a great place to move to, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, where do you want to start first?
Let's start with, as a real estate investor, the first thing that I think of before I think of the affordability crisis, I'm like, if a place is too expensive for people to live in, how am I going to fill the homes that I'm renting? Like that I'm investing in, right? Like cash flow and occupancy is a big part of this equation, so I can stick around for the home price appreciation piece. So talk to me about how are renters doing today based on this steep rise in rent and steep rise in home prices?
Yeah. So, we can quickly fall into this just narrative that homes are unaffordable and rents are unaffordable and they will always be unaffordable. But there have been some significant changes, especially over the last year, that if we think about it on a timeline of when was the peak of unaffordability, it actually is a little bit different today than what it was at the peak. So let's talk specifically about, want to talk about home buyers or renters first?
Let's talk about renters.
Renters first. Okay. So if we're thinking about the peak of home price affordability for a renter, rent price unaffordability for a renter, we should look at two things. We should look at how fast rents rose and how fast median incomes rose. And if we go back, multiple years, right? If we go back to 2020 to 2021, 2021 to 2022, you had rent price growth of 10% a year, 15% a year, 20% a year, and median income does not or did not keep up with that. So if we take this whole affordability crisis and we break it down into, did the income match the expenses for rents? That's where this unaffordability crisis really came from. It was because rents rose so much faster than what median incomes have. So this is like a nuanced point that I want to make, because number one, I want everybody to know that we are living in very tough economic times for the general population.
Yeah.
I think the rate at which it became unaffordable is legendary in its own right. It's not normal, right?
Yeah.
But if we look at the factors that have led us to this unaffordability crisis, we can start to think about, is it getting a little bit easier now?
Yeah.
Is it getting a little bit easier? And long-term, are we set up so that this affordability crisis that we're better positioned to take care of it than others?
Yeah.
So let me tell you about median incomes in Jacksonville, because many of you don't know this. Median incomes in Jacksonville are one of the biggest success stories as far as growing median incomes, especially over the last year and over the last 5 years specifically. And so I put the stats together here. Now, this is to show what has happened with rents and median incomes over the last year. And by no means do I want to promote that we are not sensitive to the affordability crisis and challenges that we have. But I think it's also worth noting that if we're thinking about when the height of that crisis was for renters, it was probably a year ago.
Yep.
At that year, rent prices had continued to balloon. I don't remember exactly the stat of the year before that, but call it 5%, 10% rent growth the year before. Well, fast forward to 2022 to 2023. Here's the median household income in Jacksonville. It actually went up 6.4%. And the median rents in Jacksonville went up 1.5%.
Pretty good.
So if we're thinking about when was the height of that crisis for a renter, it was probably 1 year ago. Now, it's not easy for a renter today.
Yeah.
But this is a very good sign. And the projections going forward are that median incomes in Jacksonville will continue to rise. Rents are going to continue to rise as well, but it's certainly going to be either at pace, or there's a very good chance that we're going to see more median income rise in Jacksonville, which would make this affordability crisis easier to deal with over the long haul.
I think this is massive, man. Like seeing that the percent change in median income is 5% more than the rent, that to me is more purchasing power for families, that are working here and are able to increase their quality of life while living in the same place, or, affording better places to live, like getting that extra bedroom for the newest kid so they can study alone when they're in elementary school, whatever it is, right?
Mhm.
Like this story of growing median incomes in Jacksonville, I think you kind of dropped it on us, telling us that like Jacksonville has the fastest growing median income in Florida,
Mhm.
that we're like way above the national average in that stuff.
Mhm.
Can we compare it to, like, how does this compare to the national average? Has median income gone up everywhere? I know that we're doing a little bit better than everybody else, but like, how does it compare to rents?
Excuse me, in terms of rents overall or
Yeah.
just median incomes? Overall, our median incomes have risen a lot more in comparison to rents than what other like the national averages.
Mhm.
And I just know that because, I look at these stats that I'm about to share with you here. Just looking at median incomes for Jacksonville compared to the nation overall,
Mhm.
we have gained our median incomes, was it over 90%, 91%?
Yeah.
Our median incomes in Jacksonville have risen 91% more than the national average over the last 5 years.
Oh, wow.
So our median incomes have grown, and this is great to share the slide right here. And by the way, guys, as always, we offer these slides available for you. If it's something that you would like to have these slides,
You can text Tara 904-293-0341. If you want these slides, it has the market update if you already have it, but Greg's continuing to add to this thing so that you can continue to have all this stuff, but didn't mean to interrupt you there.
Yeah, no, perfect. So, but yeah, our median incomes in Jacksonville have risen 24.5% since 2019. The US average has risen 12.8%. I mean, that's staggering growth there on the median income side.
Yeah.
So the affordability of Jacksonville, because median incomes have gone up so much, it's actually become more affordable over the long haul.
Yeah.
Right. And then over last year, we got to keep watching how much our median income's growing, not just how much our rent's going up, because that's what's making all of the headlines. And I understand why. But we also need to track median incomes because this is one of two big solutions that we have for solving the affordable housing crisis overall. And as a city, Jacksonville is doing well because our median incomes are rising.
Got it. So first step of the affordability crisis, if people can make more money, they're going to be able to afford the higher cost of living for rents at the very least. Jacksonville is outpacing the state, it's outpacing the US, and more than anything, it's outpacing the rent increases that have happened last year to this year, right? So it is chipping away at this pain point. And while some are, still in that pain point, it looks like a bright future because the things that we are betting on, right? This idea of like economic development of Jacksonville, higher paying jobs, plugging people into the economic flywheel, making everything better around it seems to be working. Couple questions from the audience. Greg Stone says, with the increase in home price and rent, how is this impacting days on markets, days to rent, and home inventory? What do you know about those stats, GC?
Yeah, the market's still performing roughly normal. This is really good Better Greg, that was an awesome question. And it's a great segue into talking about, what effect does median incomes have on rents and on home prices and on days on market? Well, it allows the market to perform normally, even though interest rates have been incredibly high and we've had a very low supply of housing, both for rentals and for sale inventory. So the market is performing very much like normal. Better Greg, if you haven't gotten that Jacksonville real estate market update, I actually share the days on market in the Jacksonville market. I think it was somewhere around 35 days on market in the report.
So those numbers are there. It's essentially a normal market for
Performance.
Days on market, performance, all that good stuff. Chris Gonzaga from the illustrious Hudson Valley says, does the Jax median single family rent index include condos and townhouses?
I'm not really sure. So we get this data from John Burns Real Estate Consulting. I'd have to dig into the notes of exactly how he creates the rent index. I'm not 100% certain. So I don't know about that one. When I get the data from the multiple listing service, I know exactly how it's constructed, but I don't know for John Burns.
And Drew Barnhill puts in the chat, I know I say this a lot, but the macro situation in Jacksonville is some of the best I've seen in the last 25 years, of which, Drew, I can only agree with you, man. Like, I think I've told this anecdote so many times of just like, how much more my wife is making in her W-2 job here versus what she was making in Miami. I feel like we have a really healthy group of friends. Like I just got back from my like men's accountability weekend. We're all doing really well. Whereas it feels like when I lived in Miami, it was like, man, most people you talk to are just like, oh God, the city is crushing me kind of thing. Like I personally have never lived in a city where it seems like the prosperity is so abundant and it like kind of like reaches into everywhere. It isn't one of these things of like, oh, if you had bought something 10 years ago, you're doing okay.
Right.
It feels like it's really abundant and there's new jobs and there's new opportunities and the entrepreneurship ecosystem is healthy here. So
And that's
not
why
surprised.
that's why I want to keep shining a spotlight on median income, because
Yeah.
all of that good stuff that you're describing and that I'm experiencing well with people and that I am
Yeah.
around friends and family all here in Jacksonville, it's a very similar narrative. That happens, and the quantitative number of that is median
Yeah.
income's going up.
Yeah.
None of that good stuff happens at
Yeah,
scale
scoreboard.
unless, yeah, that's a scoreboard,
Yeah.
you know? And for so long, the median income scoreboard has been low for the country,
Yeah.
and the rent scoreboard has been way high. And so
Yeah.
we've sort of just fallen into only looking at the rent part of it as assessing how we're doing. But the median income that's the other half of the scoreboard. We got to pay attention to it.
Got it. So that's heavily focused on the renter ecosystem. GC, I think if we're gonna like, you know, open up the umbrella here to talk about the housing affordability crisis, really the goal is to get homeowners in there, right? So like median income is one piece. This affects everybody equally. There's a couple of other kind of like stats in here that have to do with home buying. I think the lowest hanging fruit that we can most recently hit at is this like drop in interest rates. Can you put into perspective how the drop in interest rates helps with this idea of home affordability not cratering?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so on the renter side, if you ask the question, how do you know your renters are still going to be able to afford the rents and thus make this a good investment for you? Hopefully that helps you see. Checking median incomes and rent increases is a quick and easy way to see kind of what the scoreboard is there. And obviously that's going to solve that one. On the home buyer side, there is so much positive momentum on the home buyer side as far as home price affordability. You can really start to switch affordability. You know how to do that?
Drop interest rates.
Drop interest rates.
Yeah.
I mean, just drop interest rates,
Yeah.
right? And, for a long time, we've been waiting for that to happen. If you're asking yourselves, how do I feel confident that the real estate market is not going to crash in Jacksonville? Even though home prices have gone up so much, you got to realize that people make decisions on monthly payments.
Yeah.
And even though home prices have gone up so much, I'll give you that, interest rates have also gone up so much. And so if you want to increase the affordability and make homes more affordable, you can have home prices continue to go up, drop interest rates, and the lower monthly payments will probably be a reality for somebody, which will make it more affordable.
Yeah.
And your investments can still go up in value here. So I pulled the stats. This is straight from the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis economic data, just to show what interest rates have done on long-term mortgages since November of 2023. That was the height of the long-term mortgage interest rate environment. It has decreased from 7.8% to 6.1% in just about 1 year.
It's an almost 25% drop.
Yeah, that's
big.
That's big. So then I wanted to just make this more tangible and say, okay, well, if somebody bought that same house for that same price in November of 2023, and they bought that same house for that same price today, what is their monthly payment? Because I want you to see tangibly how much more affordable this is.
Yep.
And that's what this slide shows. Monthly payments have actually decreased 16% since November of 2023 due to lower interest rates. And of course, this is one example. That's not a statement for every house purchase in Jacksonville. But this is one example, right? If somebody bought a home for $366,000, which was the median home sales price, their monthly payment, assuming they put 20% down, yada, 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 would be $2,000 a month, $2,016 a month. If they bought that same property for $366,000 in October, right now, their monthly payment would be $1,697. Actually decreased by 16%. So if we want to see what the lever is and what the scoreboard should be for the home sales perspective, as rates continue to come down, you're going to see home price affordability become easier and easier to deal with
Yep.
from a community perspective. That's, of course, going to create a high floor for your prices and really paves the way for increased home price appreciation, especially in a market like Jacksonville, where people are loving to move. They're making the decision to move, even at the higher monthly payments. And so you would think that they're going to continue to make that decision going forward when the monthly payments come down.
Got it. That makes sense to me, G. Like it makes sense to me that right now people can afford 16% more home if they're acting on it. I would also assume that the cocktail of more affordability and higher wages means prices go up, right? Is there like an equilibrium point where it becomes less helpful to them as far as affordability goes? Or, like, is there another lever to be turned here? Wages going up, rates staying low.
Yeah.
What other levers are there?
Well, I think when we're talking about rates, incomes going up and interest rates coming down as two ways to make this more affordable, given the challenges that we face as a country, those are really short-term solutions, or at least short-term measurements, right? Definitely a short-term solution for interest rates. That's going to be a quick effect. You're going to see demand for housing go up because of that. The long-term solution here is to build more houses, and to build more houses where they're needed most, which is workforce housing neighborhoods. There's a growing deficit of over 40,000 homes in Jacksonville for those who need it most, who can't afford median income. There's over 40,000 homes of a deficit. So building more homes where they're needed most, that's the supply part of this equation. If you think about median incomes and you think about interest rates, that's affecting the demand side of the equation, right? But the supply side is so long. The way to fix this for the long haul, median incomes going up is a great thing. That can also be kind of a medium-term and long-term thing as well. But the big thing that we need to do as a country is build more homes and make it easier for new homes to be built with less red tape, to kind of get away from some of the NIMBYism, which is the theory that people want more affordable housing. They want these options to be there, but NIMBYism is when people say, not in my backyard. I don't want a quadruplex in my backyard. I don't want an apartment complex in my backyard. And so as a country, we suffer from that. And unfortunately, one of the results of that is that our housing costs continue to be higher and less affordable. Whereas if we can increase the supply, we can have homes grow at a rate which we all want. We can prosper as investors, but we can still have it be affordable for everybody.
Yeah, when I hear you say that, GC, it's not like they're not all homes being brought to market are not all made equal. I find that at least my lived experience is like when an area becomes very desirable, it's usually the most affluent people that are willing to like put some money in there first. And therefore, a lot of this like housing stock that is meant for the wealthy or higher income folks, there's never like an undersupply of that part, but it's always that workforce housing, that affordable housing part that is going to maybe require a little more density, maybe require a variance of just like, okay, we don't need this much parking because this is for a family that doesn't need as many cars as the typical American family that has too many cars, right? And that for me, where I've seen it work really well, there's always a public-private partnership that comes into account, right? Like I know that Mayor Deegan is really big on housing affordability here in Jacksonville, right? Like I would assume that anybody that would have taken the reins, no matter what, you look at this economic picture and they have to do that. So the public interest will generally be there at a local level, right? Because you're so close to it. But on the other side of the public-private partnership from public is the private piece, right? It's these companies that are willing to play ball, right? That are willing to bring forth new technology to do this, new ideas to do this, are willing to think long term. And that's where I think that I'm so hot on Jacksonville being able to push through this, because I've seen you guys now not only develop the technology to build infill lots, right? This most cities, as they densify from the inside out. right? And that's when you get the situation of somebody that works in LA but lives in the Inland Empire and has to drive 2 hours each way to work. I saw it, right? Like I lived that. I
Right.
saw guys that lived in Temecula, drove 2 hours into Orange, California, and 2 hours home.
Yeah.
That's a really rough thing to do for this like working class sector. So building in close tends to be these like super highly densified kind of like public project buildings that aren't very, very attractive. But Jacksonville doesn't really need to do that for a couple of reasons. One, it has land. And two, you guys happen to have cracked the nut on single family home and infill lots a long time ago before this was even the thing. So can you tell me a little bit just about how is it that you have always been so aligned with this piece? Like, was that deliberate or how did it work?
It started with our basic model of investing, and we saw the greatest good that we can do was to focus on workforce housing neighborhoods. The greatest good for our investors, the greatest good for our communities. So it all was central to helping these workforce housing neighborhoods.
Yeah.
And when we fast forward to today, the need of housing, specifically in workforce housing neighborhoods, has never been higher. So I feel like we're at the right place at the right time to really make this impact. And, I started to put the stats together. JWB has rented over 11,000 homes.
Okay. 11,000 homes
We have
have been
rented over 11,000 homes, and you all are a part of that success. When you invest with JWB, you are a part of the housing solution to make this more affordable. Because I'll share with you, those 11,000 homes, we track the average rents every single year, and we compare that to what HUD would deem as affordable rents in Jacksonville. Every single year, our rents are below what would be deemed affordable for HUD. So we're building more and renting more in the place where it's needed most and at the rates that it's needed most. And I'll add one more thing. The average decrease from what HUD would deem affordable for our type of inventory that we're bringing to the market with all of our investors is 38% below what HUD would deem affordable. So we collectively, as an investor base, are helping to solve the affordability challenge.
Yep.
But we're focusing on the long-term solution, not just the quick fix solution, right? It is how do we build more in the neighborhoods that are needed most? Most of the time, you mentioned how like the more affluent areas are the ones that tend to get served the most with housing supply.
Yeah.
That's easy to understand why.
Yeah.
Because there's money there,
Yeah.
right? There's money there. Builders can build and people are willing to pay and all that. The reason why it's been so challenging to serve the neighborhoods that we serve is because you typically can only incentivize a developer to do it with incentive dollars. And there's not a whole lot of incentive dollars rolling around for affordable housing. Now there's more because as a country and as a city, we are aware now because home prices have risen so much and rents have risen so much that this is a problem to solve now. So you're starting to see more of that, and that's good. That is good because there's more to solve here than JWB can do. But I do want to make one note, and you all should feel really proud about this too. JWB has never received any incentive dollars to build the houses that we build in workforce housing neighborhoods. We have never, ever received any city incentive dollar or any type of incentive dollar to do that. Yeah. And what you're seeing now is that more developers are coming in the game, and that's a great thing. We want that, but they're doing that mainly because of the incentive dollars. We, as a community here at JWB, this is our bread and butter. This is what we are here to do. We are here to serve here. We're kind of at the intersection of serving so many wonderful narratives, right?
It's true.
The investor side, the resident side, the community side, so I want you all to feel really good about it. We are making a positive impact, and we've made a positive 11,000 homes. Can you believe that? I was shocked when I put that together.
Denny is saying something. JWB is out there solving the problems that so many communities just complain about. Impressive, and we're all part of that solution. I agree. 11,000 homes, all of them deemed as even below the like top threshold of what would be considered affordable with no incentive dollars. That to me is a giant kind of like check mark of if I am if I am going to be the top executive of a city, a mayor, and I'm thinking, man, I really want to make this thing a priority because I see it coming down the line, and I'm looking around and I'm thinking, okay, I can throw a rock and hit a developer because they're always knocking on my door for whatever. But if I really want to go to the heart of the matter and say, hey, how do we really, really solve this thing in a sustainable fashion? I'm going to want to look for someone that has already essentially solved it without, while creating a triple win, essentially, right? Like we talked about the triple win last week in resident experience, but in this like community architecture, this triple win of bringing to market homes that are affordable for people to live in without having to tap into city incentives and still be able to meet numbers by you guys figuring out, hey, we can raise them in infield lots, we can sell them to investors, we can rent them at very, very fair prices that make their investment a very attractive investment, but also makes it so that the residents here that need to work at the Amazon Logistics Center, work at the school, work at the naval base, be able to make ends meet and still have a path to home ownership is like a giant lock that you guys figured out way before it became a cool conversation, which I find really interesting.
It's who we are. Like it's the genesis of this business was to serve this market, and we will be serving this market whether or not there were incentive dollars out there, more incentive dollars that there are today, or not. And I think the city really appreciates that. Yeah. We are so excited to be a part of this solution. And I got to say, Mayor Deegan is incredible. She has already set aside those funds from a city perspective because we do have a big problem to solve and we don't want it to get worse going on. So she's done an incredible job. There are so many people on city council that are doing a wonderful job. And, if you're on the inside here in Jacksonville, there's just positive kind of cohesive movement towards solving problems that is really rare in cities that have 1.6 million people. So we're super excited about that.
The Maven from the mountains of Denver wants to know, Leslie Wilson asks, would JWB ever consider using federal workforce housing development incentive dollars?
Yeah, I think we would. It's, if we can do more good, then I'm certainly okay with that. I certainly don't demonize anybody for taking city incentive dollars to do that. We haven't, because there hasn't been an opportunity for us to do that. It would have been too different for everything that we have done. But if we could increase the size and the scale and more affordable housing, and there was an opportunity to take those incentive dollars, I think we'd be open to it.
I mean, that's the type of company that I would want taking these incentive dollars. The companies that have proven that they don't necessarily need it, but they can actually maximize more, not just like put money in their pocket and not figure something out themselves. Mo Iron says, he says Maurice. Maurice, I'll call you Maurice unless you're cool with the Mo thing. Thank you for all this new info for me. Looking to reach out to JWB. That's awesome, Maurice. The best way that you do that is you either go to chatwithjwb.com and pick a time, or you shoot us an email at info@jwbcompanies.com and they'll reach out to you.
Or just text Tiara. Let me see if I get the number right. 904-293-0341. I think that's it. If not, I gave you the wrong number.
I'm scrolling up. 904-293-0341. God, you're right, buddy.
We got to start to memorize that.
Be the numbers guy in this equation.
Anybody who wants to just reach out, it's not only to request the slides. Tiara's there and is a resource for you. If you'd like to jump on the phones with us, just shoot her a text. She'll text you right back and we'll set up a time to chat.
He says Mo is good. All right. We're going to get some Mo. All right, GC. So just final takeaway. What I'm hearing is the affordability crisis is real.
Yes.
It is something we need to pay attention to. It is just like all real estate. It's not a national, it is a national problem, but it's not going to get solved nationally. It is a location by location problem, and not all cities are built the same. New York has been unaffordable for many forever, and there's no problem happening there in that regard, right? It continues to do well because of wages and because they've been able to keep up with supply. And Jacksonville is a place that is well positioned based on the fact that the median income is growing bananas, the fact that there is people that have been working for a long time on solving the supply issue in the right way, like JWB, and a public government that's already working on this thing. Plus, it feels like today is better than yesterday as far as the affordability issue is here in Jackson.
Yes. Well done.
Okay, cool. That's what I do here. I summarize things. Okay, well, that's the show today. We really appreciate it. The fact that 50 of you take an hour of your day to like hang out with us and ask these great questions and be a part of the solution and invest with JWB and add texture to the show is something that never goes unnoticed for us. So thank you so much. Like we said, tomorrow's special webinar has been postponed. We will reschedule it. It's about 1031 exchanges, but be on the lookout for that. In the meantime, JWB is going to be all over this hurricane, doing everything that they can to keep people safe, to keep you informed, keep everybody informed. And we'll be back on Tuesday to share with you the statistics about it. And just looking at, oh, look at that. What's Tuesday? We have the Maven from the mountains of Denver joining us. Leslie Wilson will be re-gracing the show with her mavenness.
Oh, man.
Leslie's been doing this a long time, man.
She is such a resource here, such a bright spot in our community. I can't wait to see you, Leslie. It's going to be great.
I can't wait to see her either. Listen, Leslie has achieved that lifestyle of like pretty much retired, travels and does cool things and makes friends wherever she goes. And I'm a little bit more than jealous about it. So I think picking Leslie's, and she has recently added to her portfolio.
Yeah.
Okay? So it is picking the brain of one of the most experienced investors, one of the most successful investors in our community that is continuing to add to our portfolio. So it's going to be a great one. I'm super pumped to pick her brain. And you got any advice for people until then? Don't be average.